Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm YK Swedish Whiskey Girl, and today I'm going to try some Compass Box whiskies. So I have three of them in front of me here. I have Hedonism, I have Oak Cross, and finally the Peat Monster. And Compass Box is a very curious kind of company. You could say they're like independent bottlers, but they call themselves whiskey makers, which is different from a distiller and more than a blender. So the ones I have in front of me here are all blended from different companies. So they buy in the whiskey from them and then blend them together to make these wonderful expressions. And a bit of a fun fact is that Hedonism was actually one of the first, I think it was the first bottle I had sitting on my shelves when I was starting out with whiskey, because I managed to get it in a raffle, and I mean, it's one of my favourites, and I'm going to talk a bit about why later on. I've also had the pleasure of meeting the wonderful Jill Boyd, who's one of the whiskey makers for Compass Box, and she's so lovely, and she hosts such lovely tastings. She describes flavours in such a passionate way that you just can't help but enjoy what she's talking about. So if you ever get a chance to go to her tastings, go for it. But yeah, we're going to start with the Hedonism, which of course is a blended grain whiskey. It is quite uncommon to see 100% grain whiskey bottlings in Scotland, even though they are kind of the backbone of the industry. Without blends, you'd probably not know who Scotland was as a whiskey country. So if you're interested in the history of whiskey, read up on blends because they are very important, and of course the grain whiskey is a major part of the blends, and so important, and also so lovely. If you like a bit of a sweeter treat sometimes, or more of what I used to call a dessert whiskey, usually you can go to grain whiskies and find that. And if you like to try really old expressions, you can usually find old grain whiskies for a great price. Hedonism is also one of few bottles that actually has a woman on the bottle, and I think all the bottles designs for the Compass Box, and especially for the Peat Monster, I really love this little guy, but they have a new design for this one now. They're really kind of fun and inviting. But of course, even though this is a non-age statement, I think when they created this, wanted to use a little bit of older grain whiskey to create the flavours for the Hedonism. It's been matured in 100% American oak barrels or rejuvenated American oak hogsheads. And the grain whiskies in this whiskey is from the Lowlands, so it contains whiskies from North British, Cameron Bridge, Port Dundas and Invergordon. And if you want to see the exact components on these and what kind of flavours the all different distilleries and their whiskies bring in and what casks they come from, check out their website because they're very transparent. They give you all the information about what distilleries they're using and what casks they are if they can. And usually if you have any questions, you can just email them and they'll answer them as well, which is of course great if you like transparency. This is also natural colour and no chill filtered. But let's have a little taste. Of course, let's start on the nose. It's such a lovely nose, this. It smells a bit like molasses, like brown sugar, so it has a slight toffee note to the sugar. It's very tropical, it has a bit of that kind of, like a lovely soft vanilla, and then very vibrant tropical coconuts. Also a bit mango as well. But definitely that kind of caramel sauce. Very lovely. Let's have a taste. Slàinte. So soft and easygoing, but it has all of that kind of sweetness and the vanilla and the tropical fruits and the coconuts, and it's such a dessert whiskey. I think it's definitely one of my favourites, and it will continue to be. I mean, it was my first own private bottle, and yeah, it was a good one to start on. I mean, I think Hedonism is the reason that I'm still so passionate about grain whiskies, and that I am so curious about them, and I love trying grain whiskies. Often if you go to a bar, I will order a grain whiskey because I think they're fascinating. I think they're usually quite lovely. When you try single malts, they all have all different characters, and you of course have the same with grain whiskies, but I think it's easier to find grain whiskey that I like instead of taking a chance and trying a whiskey that might be something in between. I tend to like all whiskies, so it is not a difficult choice finding a whiskey, but if I want something that I know I'm probably gonna like more than just thinking it's interesting and like medium liked, then grain whiskies tend to be a good one for me. Yeah, the nose is so lovely. Also has like a soft clove spice on the tongue, which makes it just like lift up the flavours a little bit more. So interesting. Let's move on and compare it to the oak cross. So I was talking about before how the compass box is a company that does so many interesting things, and this oak cross is a good example of it. So what they've done is they've taken whiskies from 3 different distilleries and blended them together, moved them to another casks, and they've done this experiment with the casks so that the heads of the casks are heavily toasted French oak, whilst the body is American oak. It's kind of this kind of mix up. They call it a hybrid cask, but I think it's really interesting when you do things like that to see how you can get different flavours that way. So what they've done is that they've mixed whiskey from Clynelish to get the fruitiness, they've mixed with Dal Ewan to get a bit of meatiness, and finally from Tanninic to get a bit of perfumed aromas into it. And it's about 60% of the total liquid is from Clynelish and 20-20 from Tanninic and Dal Ewan. And 60% of this kind of Highland blend that they created has then matured in first full American oak, and the remaining 40% went into these hybrid casks to create the oak cross. The oak cross is of course a reference to the mixture between the French oak and the American oak. And this is also bottled at 43% ABV. So let's have a little nose. It's this lovely kind of soft, I don't know, like vanilla morning, because it's like dewy and kind of that. I love mornings, it's my favourite time of day, but it's like when the air is a little bit softer, it's quite foggy, it's quite dewy, and then you have vanilla in the middle of that. Very fresh as well, very juicy. It's like pineapple as well. It has a bit of that when you have a perfume that's like floral but also fruity. So maybe a mixture between something like lavender and pineapple. A very lovely kind of fruity perfumed nose. This is one of those whiskies that I think that if this was a perfume, I would probably use it. But let's have a little taste. Slanjava. Definitely a bigger oak influence on the palate. Like that kind of charry oak element in the middle. But then in the finish you get this lovely kind of honeyed fruitiness. Like honey fruit charred fruits with honey maybe on the palate, on the finish, because it's so soft. Like it goes, so oak generally feels a little bit rougher and almost a bit bitter, but then it just turned and the finishes became very soft but still lingering. You can definitely get that pineapple still. It's very juicy. So that pineapple mixed with that kind of charred wood, and you have a bit of cinnamon spice in there as well. I mean, a lovely whiskey. If you like that kind of mixture between an oaky element and tropical fruits, and this is a really good one for that. And of course, the reason I've left this one for last, the Peat Monster, is of course because it is a peated, a smoky whiskey. So this whiskey sits at 46% ABV, and the whiskey's been matured in a refill American oak barrel. The main part, I think around 64%, is from Colilla, and most of the other part is from Lafroig, and then with 1% is a Highland blend that's been matured on heavily toasted custom-made French oak casks. That's about just 1% to give it a little bit of that extra spice. And just like the other two, it is natural colour and non-chill filtered. And you can probably see, especially if you compare it to these, how much lighter this one is. That could of course be because of the refill casks. I always say that casks are like tea bags. The first time you use a tea bag, it gives you a lot of flavour and a lot of colour, and then the second time a little bit less colour, a little bit less flavour, and the third time almost nothing at all. And when you use those refill casks, it's kind of the same. But the good thing about using a cask that might be slightly less active is that you can retain more of the smoke, which is of course very beneficial if you're someone who likes smoky whiskies. So let's have a look on the nose. It's of course this kind of big maritime smoke. I do think if you gave this to me blind, I'd probably guess it's Caol Ila because it has that kind of dry, ashy, maritime sea breeze. And almost like a pear fruitiness in there as well, like grilled pears. I could see this going really, really well with blue cheese. Because it does have that kind of sweetness in it as well. And a slight, that kind of medicinal, towards medicinal peat, so it might be the influence from Lafroig. I think the medicinal notes along with the ashy notes goes really well, but let's have a taste. Slunge it. It feels very soft at first, and then the spice kicks in on the tongue. It's a lovely spice. It kind of prickles your tongue, and it feels very kind of exciting in a way. That kind of ashy Caol Ila smoke, a bit of medicinal peat as well, but it's very kind of. It starts like this gentle little smoke and then it just grows on the finish, and that spice on the tongue feels very oaky, slightly drying, which goes really well along with the smoke. But again, I think this one with blue cheese would be absolutely brilliant. It does have that slight kind of grilled pears note as well, because it's still quite like towards the juicy end of the spectrum with those kind of green fruits. I think that's where the sweetness seems to be coming from, that kind of pear note. I mean, if you like smoky whiskies and you like something that's a little bit more dry, a little bit more ashy, I mean, with a barbecue this would be brilliant as well. And that slight fruitiness in it, then the Peat Monster's lovely. And I mean, this one I just love for the label, and the new label looks even better with illustration. I can imagine going on Islay and then suddenly out of a little cave or a hole in the beach or somewhere, there's this Peat Monster just jumping up and attacking you. But I'm gonna just quickly have a little taste of the other two and just sum it up. So the Oak Cross again. Oh, such a lovely, sweet, fruity nose. Quite oak on the palate, but still with that pineapple. Another little quick look on the Hedonism. Oh, this is just the best nose. I know I love peated whiskies, but I don't know, grain whiskies at the moment, and it just makes me happy. Oh, it's just so nice in the nose. It's that vanilla, that creamy honey, coconut, mango. And the same on the palate, and it's also so like a start whiskey, and it's so approachable. If you have a friend or someone who's trying to get into whiskies perhaps, give them a grain whiskey. Grain whiskies are great, and I mean, if they're interested in history, even better, just have a look at some grain whiskey, see what they've done for the Scotch whisky industry, and don't forget about the grain whiskies. Single malts are great, and they have so many different variations, but grain whiskies are also great, and they're lovely, and they have different but great flavours as well. But I would of course love to hear what you think of Compass Box. Have you tried any of their expressions, and do you have a favourite? I've been lucky enough to try a few different expressions. I must say Hedonism is my favourite because I mean it's what we got my passion started for grain whiskey, and it was the first bottle I owned, so very special place in my heart. If you like what I'm doing here on YouTube and of course on my other channels, I would be over the moon if you would consider using my affiliate links with Master Malt, the Whisky Exchange and the Scotch Malt Whisky Society the next time you purchase anything from them. And you can of course find all of that information in the description below, as well as links to my website, my Patreon and my Instagram if you're curious about that. I can of course currently not do any physical tastings until things start opening up in the world again. But in the meantime, if you are looking to do any virtual tastings or just want a little chat about what whiskey is or a bit of history or anything, I am currently doing virtual ones as well. I of course want to say a massive thank you to my wonderful supporters on Patreon. Thank you so much for being with me in this journey, and your support means so much. But as always, I hope you all had an absolutely wonderful day. Slanjava, skål!